I was a night shift janitor at a genetics lab, and I was kind of friends with a scientist that I'd never spoken to. Dr. Susan Patel arrived every morning at 5:30 a.m., just as I was finishing my shift, so I started leaving fresh coffee in a thermos on her desk. For months, we had a silent friendship. Her thank you notes, my carefully organized lab. Then came the emergency. A critical mistake threatened to destroy a $50 million project, and I was the only person in the building. She called me, desperate, walking me through computer commands. Then I saw the equations on her whiteboard, and she said to me, "How could you possibly know that? You're a janitor." Before we dive in, I'm curious. What's a thing you are passionate about? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you love stories about hidden brilliance, people who help from the shadows, and getting the recognition you deserve, please subscribe so you don't miss our next one. Now let me take you back to the night everything changed. My name is Jason Brown, and I've been invisible my entire life. Not literally, of course, but invisible in the way that people who clean buildings at night are invisible. Present but unseen. Necessary but unacknowledged. Essential but forgettable. I worked the night shift at Biogenesis Labs in Seattle, a cutting-edge genetics research facility housed in a gleaming building near the University of Washington campus. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 nights a week. I mopped floors, emptied trash, cleaned laboratories, and made sure the brilliant scientists who worked there during the day returned each morning to spotless workspaces. It wasn't the career I'd imagined for myself. But then again, life rarely gives people like me the careers we imagine. I was 32 years old and had been working at Biogenesis for 8 months. Before that, I'd cycled through a dozen other janitorial jobs. Office buildings, hospitals, schools. The work was always the same. Clean what other people dirtied, remain unnoticed, go home before the important people arrived. But Biogenesis was different, because at Biogenesis, I was surrounded by the thing I loved most in the world: science. I'd taught myself molecular biology from library books and free online courses. I'd spent years studying advanced mathematics, genetics, biochemistry, subjects most people needed expensive degrees to understand. I'd done it all from public libraries, from secondhand textbooks bought for a few dollars, from free university lectures posted online. I'd done it because I loved it. Because understanding how DNA encoded proteins, how genes could be edited, how life worked at its most fundamental level, that was magic to me. Real, knowable, provable magic. But I'd never had the chance to do anything with that knowledge. I'd aged out of foster care at 18 with no money, no family, and no way to afford college. I'd worked minimum wage jobs while teaching myself at night, hoping that somehow, someday, I'd find a way into the world of real science. The janitorial job at Biogenesis was as close as I'd gotten. At least here, I could be near it. I could read the papers left on desks, could study the equations written on whiteboards, could learn from the brilliant people who actually got to do the work I could only dream about. And I could watch Dr. Susan Patel. Susan Patel was a lead researcher at Biogenesis, specializing in gene therapy for rare genetic diseases. She was 36 years old, brilliant, and worked hours that made my night shift look reasonable. I'd see her car still in the parking lot at 11 p.m., at midnight, sometimes at 2 a.m. She'd be the last one to leave, sometimes just hours before I finished my shift.
And then, about 6 months ago, I noticed her schedule had shifted slightly. She started arriving at 5:30 a.m., just 30 minutes before my shift ended at 6 a.m. I'd see her car pull into the parking lot as I was finishing up, see her walk into the building looking exhausted, carrying her laptop bag and a travel mug of what I assumed was terrible coffee. Her lab was on the 3rd floor, Lab 3C, and it quickly became my favorite part of the building to clean. Not because I was stalking her, I barely saw her, and we'd never exchanged more than a polite nod in the hallway, but because her lab told a story. The whiteboards covered in complex equations, The research papers stacked on every surface, covered in her handwritten notes. The evidence of a brilliant mind pushing itself to the absolute limit. And the terrible coffee. I could smell it from the hallway. The burnt, bitter scent of coffee that had been sitting in a pot for hours, reheated multiple times, consumed purely for caffeine and not for any enjoyment. I started leaving her fresh coffee. It began as a small gesture. I'd brew a fresh pot of good coffee, not the stale institutional stuff from the break room, but beans I bought with my own money and ground myself. At 5 a.m., just before she arrived, I'd pour it into a clean thermos, add it to the small coffee station in her lab with some cream and sugar on the side, and leave before she got there. The first morning I did it, I wasn't sure she'd even notice. But the next night, when I came to clean her lab, there was a Post-it note stuck to the coffee maker. "Thank you for the coffee. It was actually good. SP." I'd smiled, felt a warmth in my chest that was probably disproportionate to a simple thank you note, and done it again the next day, and then the next, and the next. After a week, there was another note. "Seriously, this coffee is saving my life. You're a magician. Thank you. SP." After a month, "Best part of my mornings. Thank you for taking care of me. SP." The notes became a routine. She'd leave them, I'd read them, I'd leave fresh coffee, and we'd continue this silent friendship between a scientist who worked too hard and a janitor she'd never actually met. But the coffee wasn't the only way I helped her. Dr. Patel's lab was chaos. Papers everywhere, books stacked precariously, file folders scattered across every surface. It wasn't messiness. It was the chaos of someone whose mind was moving too fast for organization. Someone who was trying to hold too much information at once. So I started organizing. Carefully. Never throwing anything away. Just creating order. I'd stack papers by date. I'd arrange research articles by topic. I'd file folders in a logical system. I'd place relevant reference books where she could easily find them. And I'd study her work. Every night, after I'd finished the cleaning, I'd spend an hour reading her research notes, studying the equations on her whiteboards, teaching myself the specific area of genetics she was working on. Gene therapy, using viral vectors to treat rare genetic diseases, specifically lysosomal storage disorders. It was fascinating work, brilliant work, and Dr. Patel was clearly leading the charge. But I noticed something else too. She was drowning. The pressure, the hours, the weight of being the lead researcher on what was clearly a massive, important project, it was crushing her. I could see it in the increasingly frantic notes on her whiteboard, in the papers that were being knocked over and left scattered, in the coffee mugs that accumulated faster than I could remove them. I started doing more. If I found a paper that seemed relevant to whatever problem she was working on, I'd print it and leave it on her desk with key passages highlighted. If I saw an error in her file organization, I'd fix it. If there were books in the lab library that related to her current research, I'd leave them open to relevant chapters on her desk. After about 3 months of this, there was a note that made me pause. "To my mysterious lab assistant, I don't know who you are, but you're reading my work, and you understand it. Thank you for the articles. Thank you for the organization. Thank you for helping me think. SP." I'd stood there for a long time, holding that note, feeling something swell in my chest that was part pride and part longing. She knew someone was reading her work. She knew someone understood it. But she didn't know it was me, the janitor. And I couldn't tell her. Because what would happen if she knew? Would she be insulted that the person cleaning her lab was also analyzing her research? Would I lose my job for overstepping boundaries? Would she think I was creepy for paying such close attention to her work?
So I stayed silent. I stayed invisible. And I continued our unspoken partnership, learning cutting-edge genetics while mopping floors, helping a brilliant scientist while remaining forever in the background. Until the night everything changed. It was a Friday in late November, and Seattle was in the grip of an unusual snowstorm. The city wasn't equipped for heavy snow, and by 11 p.m., when I arrived for my shift, the roads were becoming treacherous and the forecast was calling for it to get worse overnight. The building was nearly empty. Most people had left early to beat the storm. I did my usual rounds, cleaning labs and offices, working my way up to the 3rd floor. Dr. Patel's lab was dark when I arrived, which was unusual. Normally, even when she wasn't there, she'd left her computer on, left lights on, left evidence of work in progress. But tonight, everything was off. I cleaned the lab, left the fresh coffee in its usual spot for her 5:30 a.m. arrival, and was about to leave when I noticed something on her whiteboard. It was covered in equations, as usual, but these were different, more frantic, more desperate. There were sections crossed out, recalculated, crossed out again. And at the top, in large letters, wrong. Where is the error? I studied the board more carefully. Dr. Patel was working on the final calculations for Biogenesis's flagship project, a gene therapy for Pompe disease, a rare genetic disorder that destroyed muscles and organs. I'd been following her work on this for months. The company was days away from presenting their results to FDA reviewers, a presentation that would determine whether they got approval to move to human trials. This was years of work, millions of dollars in funding, the potential to save hundreds of lives. And something was wrong. I looked at the equations more carefully, trying to understand what she'd been working on. The viral vector design, the protein folding predictions, the cellular uptake modeling. My phone rang, startling me. It was the main security line. "It's Jason at the front desk. Dr. Patel is trying to reach you. She needs you to go to her lab immediately. Can you head there now?" "I'm already here. What's wrong?" "She'll call you directly. Stay in the lab." 30 seconds later, the lab phone rang. I picked it up nervously. "Hello? Is this Jason, the night janitor?" "Yes, this is Jason."
This is Dr. Susan Patel. I need your help. I'm stuck at home. The roads are completely impassable, and I can't get to the lab. But there's an emergency. I need someone there to help me, and you're the only person in the building aside from the security. What kind of emergency? Our gene therapy project. We're presenting it to the FDA on Monday. There's a critical error in the viral vector sequence. If I don't fix it this weekend, the entire project fails. Do you know how to use a computer? Yes. Can you follow exact instructions? I need you to be my hands. I'll tell you precisely what to click, what buttons to press, what numbers to enter. Can you do that? I can do that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, sit at my computer, log in with username spatel and password. She gave me the password. Tell me when you're in. I logged in, my hands shaking slightly. On her screen were dozens of open programs, genetic sequencing software, protein modeling applications, statistical analysis tools. It looked overwhelmingly complex. I'm in. Okay, open the program called Vector Design Pro. See it? Yes. For the next hour, Dr. Patel walked me through increasingly complex computer operations. Open this file, enter these numbers, run this simulation, copy these results to this spreadsheet. She was trying to recalculate the entire viral vector design, searching for the error that was throwing off all her predictions. But I could hear the desperation in her voice. She was working blind, unable to see the screen, trying to solve a massive problem remotely. And from the increasingly frantic quality of her instructions, she wasn't finding the solution. I glanced at the whiteboard again, at her equations, at the crossed-out sections and desperate notes, and something clicked in my mind. I'd spent 6 months studying her work, I'd read every paper on her desk. I'd taught myself the specific biochemistry of lysosomal storage disorders. I understood what she was trying to do, and I could see the problem. Dr. Patel, I said carefully, interrupting her latest set of instructions, can I ask you a question? What is it? We don't have much time. What if the problem isn't in the viral vector sequence itself? What if it's in the protein folding predictions? There was a pause. What do you mean? The equations on your whiteboard? They're using standard hydrophobic modeling parameters for protein folding, but those assume a standard cellular pH of around 7.2. Your viral vector is designed to work primarily in lysosomal environments, right? Lysosomes have a pH of around 4.5 to 5. That's significantly more acidic. The hydrophobic interactions would be completely different. Your protein folding predictions would be off because you're using the wrong pH assumptions. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Hello? I said nervously. Dr. Patel? When she finally spoke, her voice was completely different. Sharp, alert, almost shocked. How do you know that? How could you possibly know any of that? You're a janitor. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and fear. I'd revealed too much. I was going to lose my job. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. I'll just follow your instructions. No, stop. Tell me, how do you know about hydrophobic modeling parameters? How do you know what pH lysosomes have? How do you know what my viral vector is designed to do? I took a breath, knowing there was no going back now. I've been studying your work for months. Every night when I clean your lab, I read your papers, I study your equations, I teach myself what you're working on. I've been teaching myself genetics and molecular biology for years, from books, from online courses, from papers. I know I'm just the janitor, and I'm sorry if I overstepped, but I saw your equations and I recognized. Are you telling me you've been teaching yourself molecular biology and genetics? Self-taught? Yes. And you understand protein folding simulations and lysosomal biology? Yes. Another pause. Then, Jason, are you absolutely certain about the pH affecting the hydrophobic parameters? Yes. The modeling software you're using, Vector Design Pro, it has a default pH setting of 7.2 in the environment parameters. I can see it on your screen right now. But if your viral vector is delivering the corrective enzyme to lysosomes, and lysosomes have a pH of around 4.5, then all your folding predictions would be wrong. The protein would fold differently in the acidic environment. That would affect everything downstream: cellular uptake, enzyme activity, therapeutic efficacy. Oh my God. Her voice was barely a whisper. Oh my God, you're right. That's it. That's the error. We've been running every simulation with the wrong environmental pH. Jason, you just saved this entire project. I did? Change the pH parameter in Vector Design Pro. Go to Environment Settings, change the pH from 7.2 to 4.8. Then rerun the folding simulation. File is called Pompeii_vector_final. Can you do that? My hands were shaking as I navigated the software, found the setting, changed it, and initiated the simulation. It's running. Says it'll take about 20 minutes. That's fine. Jason, I need you to do something else. On my desk, there should be a notebook, black, spiral-bound. Can you find it? I looked around and found it. Got it. That's my research notebook. Everything we're discussing, the pH issue, the parameter change, everything. Write it down. Date it, time it, sign your name. This is going to be part of the official record of how we fix this problem. You're going to get credit for this. Dr. Patel, I don't need credit. I'm just happy I could help. Jason, you didn't just help. You solved a problem that my entire team of PhDs missed. You saw something we were all too close to see. That deserves recognition. The simulation finished. The results were completely different from the previous runs, and they made sense.
The protein folding predictions now matched the experimental data Dr. Patel had been getting. The error was fixed. We spent the next 3 hours on the phone as Dr. Patel walked me through running the complete set of simulations with the corrected parameters. Every test came back perfect. The gene therapy worked. The project was saved. At 4 a.m., Dr. Patel finally said, "That's it. That's everything we need. Jason, I can't thank you enough. You've saved years of work. You've saved funding that keeps 200 people employed. And you've saved a therapy that could help hundreds of children with Pompe disease. I'm just glad I could help. I'm coming in tomorrow. Today, I guess, since it's already Saturday morning. The roads should be clear by afternoon. Can you come back tonight for your regular shift?" "Of course." "Good. Because you and I need to have a serious conversation." I hung up the phone feeling a mixture of elation and terror. I'd helped. I'd actually helped with real scientific research. But I'd also revealed my secret, and I had no idea what the consequences would be.
I finished my shift, went home to my small apartment, and tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing, replaying the phone call, wondering what Dr. Patel would say when we finally met face-to-face. When I arrived for my shift Saturday night, Dr. Patel's car was already in the parking lot. My heart pounded as I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. She was in her lab, working at her computer, and she looked up when I knocked on the open door. This was the first time we'd actually had a real conversation, face-to-face. Dr. Susan Patel had dark hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, intelligent brown eyes behind glasses, and the kind of exhausted but determined expression I'd come to recognize from months of seeing her lab. "Jason," she said, standing up, "come in, please." I entered nervously, still holding my cleaning supplies like a shield. "I wanted to thank you in person," she said. "What you did last night, Jason, that was extraordinary. You saved this project. Completely saved it. I'm just glad I could help." "How long have you been studying genetics?" "About 10 years. On my own." "No formal education?" "No, ma'am. I aged out of foster care at 18 with no money for college. I've been teaching myself from library books and online courses while working night jobs." Dr. Patel sat down on the edge of her desk, studying me. "And you took this janitorial job because it was the closest I could get to real science. I applied for lab assistant positions, but without a degree, no one would even interview me. So I took the only job I could get in the building." "You've been reading my work." "Yes, I'm sorry if I was inappropriate." "Jason, stop apologizing. You've been reading my work, understanding it, and helping me for months. The organized papers, the highlighted articles, the reference books left open to relevant pages. That was you." "Yes, you're brilliant." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was stating an obvious truth. "You're completely self-taught, and you understand molecular biology at a level that takes most people a PhD to reach. That's not normal. That's exceptional." I didn't know what to say to that. Dr. Patel pulled something out of her bag. A notebook. My notebook. The black spiral-bound one I'd found on her desk. "This isn't my research notebook," she said. "This is yours. I found it in the supply closet a few weeks ago when I was looking for whiteboard markers. I was curious, so I looked inside." My face burned with embarrassment. That notebook contained years of my self-taught education. Complex mathematics, biochemistry notes, genetics problems I'd worked through. "Jason, this notebook shows years of advanced study. These aren't beginner notes. These are graduate-level problems you've solved yourself. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you apply for scholarships, for programs for non-traditional students?" "Because I'm 32 years old with a GED and no money. Who's going to give a scholarship to someone like me?" "Someone like you?" Dr. Patel's voice was sharp. "Someone brilliant? Someone self-motivated? Someone who taught themselves molecular biology while working night shifts? Jason, you're exactly the kind of person who deserves opportunities."
She pulled out her laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was an email she had already drafted, addressed to the CEO and several other Biogenesis executives. I'm sending this Monday morning. It details everything that happened last night, the error, the solution, and your contribution, and it includes a recommendation. A recommendation for what?
Biogenesis has a scholarship program for exceptional employees pursuing degrees in scientific fields. Full tuition, books, and a stipend. You work part-time in the labs as a research assistant while completing your undergraduate degree. And if you maintain good grades, the scholarship extends through graduate school. I stared at her. That's for employees with degrees who want to pursue advanced education. I'm a janitor with a GED. You're a genius with a GED, Dr. Patel corrected. And you just saved a $50 million project. I think that qualifies you for the scholarship. I'm also recommending that you be brought on as a research assistant in my lab immediately, working alongside me while you complete your degree. Dr. Patel, I can't what? Can't accept an opportunity you've earned? Can't let people see how brilliant you actually are? Jason, you've been hiding in the shadows for months, helping me, teaching yourself, being invisible. It's time to stop being invisible. I felt tears building behind my eyes. What if I fail? What if I get there and I'm not actually as smart as you think I am? You solved a problem last night that stumped a team of PhDs. You saw what we couldn't see because we were too close to it, too deep in our assumptions. That's not just intelligence, Jason. That's perspective. That's exactly what good science needs. People who see things differently, who question assumptions, who come at problems from unexpected angles. She stood up and held out her hand. So what do you say? Are you ready to stop being a janitor and start being a scientist? I shook her hand, unable to speak through the emotion closing my throat. Finally, I managed, "Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. You earned this. Now, I have work to do, and I suspect you do too. But starting Monday, you and I are colleagues. I expect you to challenge my assumptions, question my work, and keep leaving me good coffee." I laughed through my tears. I can do that. The next few months were a whirlwind. The FDA presentation happened on schedule using the corrected parameters I'd identified. Biogenesis's gene therapy was approved for the next phase of trials. The project was hailed as a breakthrough. And I was offered the scholarship. There was resistance at first from some executives who couldn't understand how a janitor could possibly qualify for a competitive scholarship program. But Dr. Patel fought for me, and the results spoke for themselves. I'd saved the company's flagship project. That was worth more than any credential. I started taking classes at the University of Washington while working part-time in Dr. Patel's lab as a research assistant. After years of teaching myself in isolation, being in actual classes with actual professors and other students was overwhelming and wonderful. I was older than my classmates, came from a different background, had a perspective shaped by years of being invisible in the scientific world I loved, but that perspective turned out to be valuable. I asked questions others didn't think to ask. I saw problems from angles others missed. And I worked harder than anyone else because I knew how lucky I was to be there. Dr. Patel became more than my boss. She became my mentor, my advocate, my real friend. She pushed me, challenged me, and never let me hide or minimize my abilities. 2 years later, I completed my undergraduate degree with a perfect GPA. The scholarship extended to graduate school, as promised, and now I'm a PhD candidate in Dr. Patel's lab working on the next generation of gene therapies.
But I still remember what it felt like to be invisible. To be the person cleaning the labs, studying whiteboards in secret. helping from the shadows because that was the only way I could be part of the world I loved. And I make sure to see the people others don't see. The janitors, the technicians, the support staff who keep our labs running. Because brilliance doesn't require credentials. It just requires curiosity, dedication, and the courage to keep learning even when no one's watching. Last week, I was invited to co-author a paper with Dr. Patel on the Pompe disease gene therapy. My name, Jason Brown, was listed second, right after hers. The paper acknowledged my contribution to identifying the critical pH parameter error that had nearly derailed the project. When I saw my name in print on a scientific paper for the first time, I thought about that night shift janitor who used to leave coffee for a scientist he'd never met, who used to study equations in secret, never imagining he'd be allowed to contribute. That person still exists inside me. He's the reason I never take this opportunity for granted. He's the reason I work harder than anyone else, publish more, contribute more, because I know what it's like to be locked out of the world you belong in. And I know what it's like when someone finally opens the door. Dr. Patel and I still have our coffee ritual. But now, instead of leaving it on her desk before she arrives, I bring 2 cups to our morning meetings. We've published 4 papers together. I've won awards for my research. I'm on track to finish my PhD in 3 years. But the most important thing I learned wasn't from a textbook or a lecture. It was from Dr. Patel. That night on the phone when I was terrified I'd lose my job for revealing what I knew. She taught me that being invisible isn't noble, that hiding your light doesn't serve anyone, that the world needs every brilliant mind it can find, regardless of where those minds come from or what credentials they hold. What did you think of Jason's journey from invisible janitor to recognized scientist? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about hidden brilliance, the power of mentorship, and never giving up on your dreams touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more meaningful stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our next inspiring tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.